Tonight on CFTK-TV News, Canada Post's workers have officially gone on strike. Discussions about BC ports being able to be exploited by drug cartels have popped up, and the Thornhill Fire Department has some Christmas season safety tips.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin, and here's what's making the news in the Northwest and beyond for today. The Canada Post employees have officially entered a legal strike position. That means mail service has halted across the country until an agreement is reached. There's lots of uncertainty now about what either side will do next. CTV's St. Jean Alexander now with the latest on the labor dispute as another union went back to work.
Here's the good news. It will likely take days for operations to be fully up and running. But work has resumed at Canada's busiest port.
It was a little over a week ago that in BC, the employer locked out the foreman involved in this and basically shut the port down.
The federal government ordered everyone back to work, pointing to binding arbitration. But now Ottawa is keeping an eye on Canada Post. Still far apart on key issues, carriers could stop work altogether, hold rotating strikes, or do nothing at all for now.
Neither party seems to believe that this would be a total work stoppage. Frankly, I don't think either party knows right now.
Especially concerned are remote communities where companies like Amazon don't deliver.
The last mile in the world is very, very expensive and they lose money.
This is their lifeline to the stores and to the banks and to everything they need, right?
Canada Post is also a lifeline for many charities at a time when people tend to feel the most generous.
A lot of our supporters are of an older demographic that still write checks and still send them in envelopes through the mail and comes to our gift processing center. And so an interruption to postal services impacts us quite significantly.
Pay and benefits are key issues, but also Canada Post would like to join the likes of Amazon and offer delivery 7 days a week.
Canada Post is in a fight for its life here. I mean, the Crown Corporation has lost $3 billion over the last 4 years.
As for the port, the union plans to fight the government's order. But for now, goods are moving once again. St. Jean Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
And now we switch over to CFTK's Damian Smith with some word on how the postal strike is looking locally.
Now, after a week-long strike wrapping up yesterday from port workers in BC and Montreal, a new strike has started as of this morning. And on Tuesday, Canada Post workers put out a 72-hour notice that workers would go on strike, with delivery services unavailable and limited offices being open. And here we are on Friday, with both parties unable to come to an agreement after a year of negotiations.
That's why we're going on strike, to make it strong towards Canada Post, to make sure that we're making our statement and we want a better workplace for our co-workers.
As 95% of the 55,000 total workers voted in favor of going on strike, local president Marie McKinney states that a lot of it comes down to the cost of living.
Right now, we're not keeping up with all the demands with the groceries and the cost of living and all that.
Canada Post has stated that they have offered an 11.5% pay increase over 4 years, along with additional pay leave, a defined benefit pension, and job security provisions. And whether producer or consumer, small businesses will be affected by this strike, with Black Friday 2 weeks from now, along with Christmas just 6 weeks away.
Definitely, it does make it difficulty for the small businesses and everything. Me myself, I do have a small business and I'm going to be starting up another one in that, and we rely on Canada Post to make that effort. But with our corporation not coming to our terms, or even with both parties, it's kind of hard for us to even do that. So that's why we're striking for.
We're on day one of the official strike, with the last strike reaching about a month in length back in 2018. And we'll continue to monitor how this may affect the local economy here in Northwest BC.
What we want is just for our negotiators to come to agreement that both are wanting to be done and everything, because we're all in this together with brothers and sisters.
From CFTK-TV in Terrace, I'm Damian Smith.
Kitimat City Council has recently made the decision to pass a motion that will give grant funds to a project that will be done mainly on Heisler Boulevard. The project in question will be done in several phases, and its ultimate goal is to build a walkway on the street so that pedestrian and cyclists traveling in that area can be a bit safer. The project is also supposed to upgrade the stretch spanning between Kingfisher Avenue and Alabila Boulevard, such as adding better lighting and patching up the pathways. Both Kitimat and the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikine are said to be helping cover the cost of the upcoming second as well as third phase of the project, which are $715,000 and $680,000, by committing $215,000 and $204,000 each respectively. Despite days of search efforts, 21-year-old Aiden Waddle is still missing. The search continued today, and an update from the Kitwan base camp said if you're going to help search, it's important to check in at the base camp daily to ensure everyone's safety. Waders, rain gear, boots, and warm clothes are also recommended. Search and rescue have been deployed along with the RCMP. The police say that search efforts are supported by teams on the water, ground, and air. Waddle was reported missing on November 10th after failing to return from fishing. As the ornaments come out and residents begin decorating for Christmas, the Thornhill Fire Department wants to remind people of a few safety considerations for the holiday season. Here's CFTK's Jaylene Matthews with more.
With the season of Yule drawing nearer, there's a few things to consider before getting swept away in the holiday hubbub. As you pick out or pull out your tree, here's what to keep in mind.
If you guys have a fake tree, it's obviously one of the safer ones. That being said, it is fuels within that tree that can light up. So keeping the candles, any kind of ignition source further away from that tree is always the best practice. For the live trees, making sure you water. Keep that moisture within that timber so that doesn't turn into a candle for you as well.
Also think about safety distances within the home.
If you do have the candles in the corner, keeping them away from the couch. Make sure that they're on a hard surface, making sure that all those fuels are staying away from any other ignition source.
Lights are another thing to consider.
Absolutely. So string lights and extension cords all go hand in hand. So making sure that you give them a good inspection before you put them out there at the beginning of the season when you start to put them on the house. Make sure there's no frays, no cracks, no tears within the outer sheath of that electrical so that we don't get the sparks.
And Captain Doss says it's probably best to get it done earlier.
Stringing up Christmas lights, again, try and do it early into the fall if you can. Don't be getting up there when there's snow and the ice is already building up on the roof. If that's the case, do it from a good, safe ground ladder rather than being up on the roof and putting yourself at risk. So.
For CFTK-TV News, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Coming up next, many of Canada's RCMP members will soon begin wearing body cams. Welcome back. In the wake of high-profile RCMP investigations with links to Mexican drug cartels, one Lower Mainland mayor says Canada is developing a reputation as a safe haven for transnational gangs. CTV's Ben Milger has more on what's being pushed to protect the BC ports.
150 million metric tons of cargo moved through the Port of Vancouver last year, some of it illegal drugs and guns.
So we need to have a better federal policy. I'm very upset and continue to be upset.
In the past 2 weeks, RCMP have announced arrests in a pair of large investigations linked to Mexican drug cartels. A raid in Surrey yielded cash, drugs, and guns. A bust in Falkland uncovered the largest and most sophisticated drug super lab in Canadian history. Delta Mayor George Harvey says transnational crime groups are exploiting weaknesses at ports.
The cartels are known that they're here, and we're receiving illegal contraband, including weapons, and drugs, and precursors from land, from the air, and from the sea, too.
He's calling for a national police force dedicated to cracking down on illegal activities at ports, something the RCMP and Canada Border Services Agency are currently responsible for. BC's public safety minister has raised port security with the feds. Back in September, the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General wrote to the federal government, urging them to increase enforcement and to pursue efforts in closing the gaps in federal legislation and regulations that organized crime groups are exploiting at our ports. Former BC Solicitor General Cash Heed sees no reason to create a whole new agency when the Mounties are already on the job.
It's not a good idea, and resources absolutely could be utilized in a different fashion.
He suggests RCMP need a new strategy for combating illegal activity at ports, one which may require more funding.
Why would we go to that great expense and work and when we have a mandated federal agency responsible for it at this particular time?
The Port of Vancouver says it is open to discussions about improving port security. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
Here in BC and across the country, over 10,000 Mounties will begin wearing body cameras starting Monday. The RCMP shared its rollout plan detailing how the new tool will be phased in across the country. But as CTV's Abigail Turner explains, the cameras come with some controversy.
A new tagline sported by the RCMP: seatbelts off, cameras on.
The whole point of this is to restore trust and confidence.
A feeling they hope body-worn cameras will bring when the rollout begins for all RCMP officers next week, something the Prime Minister pushed for in 2020 when public trust was eroding.
The adoption of body cameras. I'm committing to raising this with the provinces this week so we can move forward as quickly as possible.
Now, 4 years later, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police says the training and testing is complete and up to 15,000 frontline Mounties will be equipped with cameras over the next year and a half.
The objectives of the body-worn camera project are strengthening transparency, accountability, and public trust, resolving public complaints more quickly, improving interactions between the public and police, and also improved evidence gathering.
86 detachments are expected to be operational by next month, using the devices for everything from chasing suspects, taking statements, and pulling over drivers. The federal government will provide $240 million over the next 6 years, with $50 million in ongoing annual funding, money one lawyer says could be better spent elsewhere.
Police like their toys, whether that's helicopters, fancy cell phone interceptors. Here in Ottawa, the police force, for goodness sake, has a tank.
The Mountie mandate follows the footsteps of local police force policies, including Vancouver and Delta.
21st century policing deserves a 21st century tool, and this is just one of those tools.
Video will be securely stored in a cloud-based system, with officers required to dock the camera at the end of each shift, unable to edit or alter footage. Still, critics raise concerns about privacy.
There is racism and systemic bias in our police forces. A fact, by the way, that the police forces often don't admit and refuse to see. And so who's going to be recorded most often? It's those communities. Who's going to be in charge of when a camera's turned on and turned off? It's the police. And so it only accentuates the power imbalance.
RCMP say there will be repercussions for officers who don't turn on their cameras, but they couldn't say exactly what those consequences would be. Abigail Turner, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast is likely to be rainy with a low at 8 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area will also see rain, but with a low of 4 degrees. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should instead get periods of snow and a low down at -5 degrees. On the north coast, the next week or so will be nothing but rain, and the high will bounce from 8 to 5 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will see a combo of mainly rain and snow, while the high moves from 5 to 0 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, the upcoming week might see a little sun at points, while dealing with the rain and snow, as well as the high should shift from 4 to -5 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is slippery sections, water pooling, road maintenance work, utility work, construction work, other maintenance, and electrical maintenance. Highway 118 has some slippery sections too. Highway 37 has some compact snow and slippery sections. Highway 37A has compact snow and bridge maintenance, and the Telegraph Creek Road has slippery sections as well. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, some Republicans are not happy with Donald Trump's cabinet picks. Welcome back. An Abbotsford man pled guilty to multiple charges related to trafficking bear parts, but instead of going to jail, he'll pay a fine, a punishment that the BC Conservation Service thinks will deter others from committing similar offenses. CTV's Ben Nesbitt has more.
Crown says Hong Tao Yang was told multiple times by an undercover investigator that what he was doing was illegal, but that did not stop him. Now he's on the hook for thousands of dollars. The 52-year-old pleaded guilty to 2 counts of trafficking in bear paws and 1 count of trafficking in wildlife meat. According to an agreed statement of facts, a member of the public reported to the BC Conservation Service that a worker at a Maple Ridge scrapyard, later identified as Yang, asked him if he had black bear parts. Conservation then sent an undercover detective to the scrapyard who built a relationship with Yang while posing as a hunter in the fall of 2022. Yang would eventually buy bear parts off the investigator on multiple occasions before he was arrested last October. Crown acknowledged there was no evidence of Yang reselling the parts and agreed that he should only pay the minimum fine for each offense, meaning he now owes a little more than $8,600. Conservation is hoping this will deter others from committing these types of acts.
When you create a market, just by purchasing these items, it can kind of escalate, right? And more people start doing it, and then we have issues with, animal populations.
The judge said that Yang being a first-time offender was a serious mitigating factor. He also accepted defense's submission that Yang bought the parts for both personal use and traditional Chinese medicine. He has 18 months to pay the fine.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is back at his Mar-a-Lago estate after shaking up Washington with his cabinet picks, and not all Republicans are on board with his controversial choices. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest.
With President-elect Trump back home in Florida today, Washington is reeling from some of his controversial picks to lead key government agencies. The latest, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., tapped to run the Department of Health and Human Services. The vaccine skeptic known to promote unorthodox health concepts dropped his own presidential bid to support President-elect Trump. He joins Matt Gaetz, selected for Attorney General. He quickly resigned from the U.S. House
to pursue the position of Attorney General in the Trump administration.
That move halting a bipartisan House Ethics Committee review, though lawmakers in both parties want to see the results. Gaetz also faced a lengthy federal criminal investigation for alleged sex trafficking of a 17-year-old girl. Prosecutors ultimately closed the case without charges, and he's consistently denied wrongdoing. While railing against the Justice Department, he's now tapped to lead.
The lawfare we've seen against President Trump will do great damage well beyond our time in public service.
The president-elect saying Gaetz will, quote, root out the systemic corruption at DOJ, while some Republicans argue Mr. Trump has a mandate. Others joining Democrats in raising deep concerns about both Gaetz and the president-elect's pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard.
They live in this world of conspiracy theory, of burn it all down sensibilities.
Gabbard, a former House Democrat turned Trump ally who would advise the president on the government's most closely guarded secrets, has been a vocal critic of U.S. intelligence assessments and has shared Russian claims about Ukraine that have been discredited by lawmakers. All eyes now on the Senate as a new majority leader navigates controversial confirmations and demands from President-elect Trump to sidestep the process if his picks can't get through. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And now we turn our attention to how the stock markets are looking as of today compared to yesterday. The Canadian dollar is down 26/10 of a cent, the price of gold is down $2.80, oil is down $1.68, natural gas is up 4 cents, aluminum is down $10.50. In Toronto, the TSX is down 158.99 points, the Venture Index is up 0.71. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 305.87, and NASDAQ is down 427.53. Still ahead is another profile on Taylor Swift's Eras Tour coming to Canada. Welcome back. Swifties from all over the world have flocked to Toronto for the second-to-last leg of the history-making Eras Tour, which will end in Vancouver next month. CTV's Heather Wright reports on how Toronto prepared for the influx and impact of Taylor Swift.
The Eras Tour has landed.
We've got a lot going on.
Swifties bringing to Toronto the energy, the outfits, and the excitement.
It's awesome. We've been talking about this for a year and a half. It's a great night.
Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour!
The area outside the Rogers Centre packed with fans and security. Thousands are expected to flock to the Rogers Centre over the next 10 days for 6 sold-out shows.
Thank you.
And with Taylor Swift comes Swiftonomics, the boost to local economies generated by the Eras Tour.
We went shopping today and we're having a little girls' weekend. It's the best.
With tourism numbers in Toronto still below pre-pandemic levels, this tour is a lift to downtown hotels and businesses.
And the vast majority of the fans we expect for the concerts this week are coming from out of town.
And not only is the tour good for business, Andrew Weir says it's good for Toronto's reputation as well.
Especially when you're one of the cities that has among the most shows of any city in the world. People take notice.
Big shows also mean big security. A perimeter has been set up around the Rogers Centre. You can see the mounted unit is here, the bike unit is here as well, and there are a number of road closures in the entire area.
The Toronto Police have been working really closely with tour organizers, city staff, all departments to ensure that we have appropriate resources in place.
And while the city says it is prepared, those preparations aren't sitting well with some, especially those who live and work downtown.
Chaos, mayhem.
And are bracing for 10 days of commotion.
And I think it's just been a little bit difficult feeling like maybe day-to-day needs for residents are not being prioritized, but this is.
And this is only night 1. 5 more shows for Taylor Swift here in Toronto before she wraps up the Eras Tour in Vancouver.
Heather Wright, CTV News.
Invest Vancouver, Metro Vancouver's regional economic development service, released a new report that shows how foreign direct investment is a powerful driver of employment and economic growth in BC. The report said in 2022 that foreign multinational enterprises employed over 49,000 people in BC, which marked a 46.3% increase when compared to 2016. It said the largest driver of employment sector by foreign enterprises in BC is the professional, scientific, and technical services, which increased by over 190% from 2016 to 2022. Mike Hurley, chair of the Metro Vancouver board, said that foreign investment spurs local business activity, expands job markets, broadens the tax back, and directly supports employment and growth. Richmond's RCMP are looking for witnesses after a teenager was hit by a vehicle earlier this week, leaving him in critical condition. Officers responded to the incident on the 6100 block of River Road, where police say the pedestrian was hit by a gray Dodge Charger as he was crossing mid-block. They say the boy was transported to the hospital with significant injuries, and the driver remained on the scene. Police say impairment is not believed to be a factor, but are asking anyone who saw the incident or has dashcam footage of the area around the time of the crash to contact them. That is all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Kel Maslin, and thanks for watching.